Welcome to Would You Like to Know More About? This is Norco College's podcast, and this is episode 3 on Affinity Groups. This morning we are joined by Vyvana Woolridge. She is one of our amazing success coaches here at the college, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Vyvana Woolridge, and I'm actually a Norco College alumni. And then I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I graduated there with a BA in African American Studies and Chicano Studies. And now I'm back working for the Emoji program, which is actually a program that I was formerly in as a student. So now I serve as a student success coach for Emoji, as well as Women Lean in Circle coordinator.
Okay, so today we're talking about affinity groups, and we're talking about how, let me back up a little bit. An affinity group is any group on campus that could be organized around a particular feature or factor, and it could be race, it could be gender, it could be age, it could be athletics, it could be a team or a club or whatever. And that all the research shows that if a student is active in an affinity group, that they will be more likely to succeed. And we also call them sticky spots, right? So spots on campus where students are being sticky, either in hanging out or finding support within each other. But your position particularly is a success coach. And I bet a lot of people have no idea what that job is. So could you give us a brief overview of what your job is?
Of course. So as a student success coach, I'm essentially there for the students to utilize as a tool. So anything that they need help in order to help them be successful, that's essentially what I'm there for. So a lot of times I'll do one-on-one sessions with the students, and during that time we focus on where they're struggling academically, where they may need help career-wise, whether that's in the current job that they're in or finding internships that are more geared towards the major that they're going for, as well as personal. So with affinity groups, a lot of our students do suffer from things outside of school. So whether it's homelessness or food insecurities. So a lot of times if those things aren't being handled or addressed, it's hard for them to focus and be successful here at school. So my job a lot of times is to really dive into that more personal side of what the students are going through, and then to help them to kind of solve those problems.
So you need to make a relationship with all of your students.
I know a lot more about my students than I probably would have expected to.
I bet that's taxing. I bet that's emotionally hard because you're having to build that trust with them every semester, and then also keeping distance at the same time. You know, as an educator, that's part of your job, right? You have to be open and receptive, but at the same time, you have to have a limit. And I'm sure that's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, it is very difficult. Like I said, I'm a recent grad from Cal State Fullerton. I just graduated last year. I'm only 22, so a lot of these students are only about 2 years younger than me, maybe 3. So a lot of them kind of see me as a peer sometimes. So it's like, hey, do you want to come hang out with us? And that's where that kind of like separation comes in, right? And even like my brother's in the program. He's like, why don't you just hang out? And I'm like, having to like even
I'm not your sister today.
Yeah, exactly. So just having to balance that out. But I realize how important it is to have those relationships. And when we start to have conversations with the students, they realize like, hey, we're a lot more alike than we are different. And I think that that's kind of where that trust starts to build up, because they know like if I give you information, I'm not going to hear about it from someone else. So just knowing that, letting the students know that this is a safe space for them. And a lot of times in the world, you don't have that. So just I've noticed that we've had a lot more students come around, especially after like COVID, and a lot of them were online, and they're like, I didn't even know you guys were here. And now I see them every single day. And I'm like, oh, did you have class? No, I just came up to hang out.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That
like,
is.
You
that
guys
is
want to be
incredible.
here? Yeah.
I want to take you back to when you were part of Emoji. And that was when actually I first met you walking by the office, and I know you were student worker for Dr. Nelson, right?
I was actually her student.
Yeah, but
I was in office hours.
You were in office hours. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would walk by her office and I would be like, wait, I know her. And I would see you on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So why did you go out of your way to become part of Emoji?
So I'm always very transparent with my students, and I joined one because I wanted the stoles because I thought that they were
yes,
nice,
nice.
and priority registration. Those are the two main
You know what?
reasons.
Those are real reasons. My
Yeah.
daughter has a best friend who went to her brother's graduation and saw all of the tassels.
Yeah.
And her goal in high school was to have the most tassels. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm all about that too. That's good.
Yeah.
I have my sweater, I have my pins, I have things. I like all that stuff. So, okay, you wanted the stole, which is very cool. And you wanted priority reg.
Yeah. So originally, that's how it started out. And then the English course was one of my first classes that I took. And in Emoji, with the English courses, the curriculum is more African American based. So everything that we're reading about is usually Black authors or has to do with Black history in some way. And never in my time in education had I felt seen or could I really connect to what I was learning. So this was like the first time I was like, oh my God. Like,
Representation matters.
yes, it does. And I never got anything higher than like a C on any of my papers in high school. Like I went through high school I played sports and stuff. So that was like my main thing that I loved. But that was the first time that I felt like school wasn't school. And I really loved to be here. And then I started to do well. So I was like, I want to keep doing well, which is why you guys saw me in Dr. Nelson's office. And then we started going to community meetings. And for me, I grew up in Santa Ana. So I am half Mexican, and that was the main population that I grew up around was Latinos. So this was one of the first times that I really got to be in touch with my other side and being around people because my dad's family, there's a lot that goes on there, so we don't really get to connect with that side, unfortunately. So it was a time for me to really tap into that other side of like my ethnicity, and I really felt seen. So a lot of times growing up, it was like, oh, but you're Black when I was around Latinos. And here I never really got that. It wasn't like, well, you're only half. It was, I felt accepted. So I could really start to see myself just being here and I felt welcomed. So then it wasn't until my second year when Sean arrived. So they tried to get me involved the first year and I was like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm just here for school. And when he came, he was like, well, why don't you come try out for leadership? Because he saw me with all my colored pens organizing. And I was like, no, it's okay. He was like, just try it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So I go to the first meeting. He's like, why don't you run for a position? And I was like, okay. So I did, and I went for activities director. So I got to plan and coordinate all the activities. But for me, if I'm in something, I'm like all in. So we were meeting with the president of the school. We were advocating for a space, just being able to do something for my community and having them be seen and being able to be in the mix of that. I'm very big on kind of like being that voice for people who maybe don't want to speak up or feel like they can't speak up or they haven't gotten to that point in their life yet. So once I was in the program and I got super involved, I was like, oh, I love this. And that just went on.
As I was thinking about this today, I was thinking about that impetus to join, and that joining an affinity group takes bravery. It takes that moment of, I'm going to put myself out there and see if they like me.
Yeah.
And I remember in my own experience doing that and being so very nervous that somehow I would be getting rejected or not asked to join or whatever. So how do you think we could make that easier for students who are coming to the college? Because I know some people may think this is ridiculous, but I am truly an introvert, and actually getting out there is very difficult for me. So I would walk on the outsides and watch. And unless there was a sport or something like that I could go in and, just lose my head while I was doing it, I was always on the outside. So how do we make it easier for students beyond Club Rush, which is really great, but it's very high energy, right? So the introverts are probably like, okay, this is a lot. How do we make it easier for students to connect with an affinity group?
I will say I've always kind of been that one that walks around as well, around the edges. I like to be behind the scenes. Something that I've found very important is, especially like working so closely with the Black community, we're not all the same.
Mm.
And I think that due to that stereotype, a lot of Black students kind of take that on. So we have a lot of students in the club who are like, they'll see kind of like the main group, and then they're like, well, I'm not really like them, like, so I don't know where I fit in. And sometimes that's a little heartbreaking for me because I'm like, this is where I found my space. So seeing other students come and they are Black students, and they're like, well, just because I'm Black, I don't like this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, no, I know that. But we have other people in the program that are into the same things as you. So even helping them to kind of get those stereotypes out of their head as well. Something that we've really done that I think will help students, especially like introverts or those who are like, well, I don't know how I fit in. We try to create branches off of our programs. So Emoji is the main learning community. And then we have like our club component, which is why we go out and do different events. But now we have like a Philomu club. So those students who are more techie and more into film and videography and different things like that, they kind of get together. And I think that creating that, it allows the students to be part of something that's bigger than themselves without feeling out of place. And I think that that's something that it's kind of like that stepping stone, right? So if they do feel uncomfortable, or you do have to be very brave to kind of put yourself out there. And I think that creating those smaller like subsets within a bigger umbrella branch would help that. As far as moving it onto a larger scale, besides Club Rush, honestly, the majority of students that we get is just word of mouth. And I think that at that point, it not necessarily becomes our students' responsibility, but at the same time, a lot of them will talk to friends in their classes. And it'll be like, hey, like, I noticed like you're sitting by yourself. Why don't you come sit with us? Oh, hey, have you heard of this program? That's honestly how we've gotten most of our students. And I think that that helps because it is a smaller, it's not as intense, right? As like Club Rush, there's not so many people. And word of mouth is, I feel like, the best way just to get any type of information out a lot of the time, as far as students are concerned, I feel like.
Could faculty be helping?
I feel like faculty could always help. I know in my classes when I was in Professor Reed's class, I was always like, hey, I have an announcement. And I never felt like he felt some type of way about it. Like, I feel like some professors might get a little selfish about like time, like, well, this is my time to discuss stuff. Like,
can I just write it here on the side of the board?
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like he always wanted to be supportive of me getting the word out about different programs that we had on campus, whether it was Emoji or Women's Lean and Circle, or just some great opportunity that would help to benefit the students. So maybe even if faculty in class were like, oh, is anyone part of a club here? Do you have any announcements? Making time for that, I think that one, it would help the students to be more comfortable around their classmates, because I've noticed in college, a lot of times people won't talk to each other if you don't know people in the class. So I think that that would help with that kind of rapport. And I think that it will help also with students feeling more comfortable talking to their professors. And they see like, oh, you're not just here to feed me information, but we can actually talk about other things, and you care what goes on in our life outside of the classroom.
So, yeah, that's really great. And I would hope my colleagues would welcome that at the same time. I know in English we tend to be the homeroom of classes, and so we do a lot of announcements. But in college it's different, and I think we need to celebrate that. I think we're doing a better job. We're having more events on campus, and we're using our social media a lot more. I always feel a little bit like, hey, we're on social media. It's kind of the moms trying to get in there a little bit, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it always feels a little awkward to me. But I think we do a better job. So when you were in Emoji and you were transferring, were you thinking intentionally about finding an affinity group at Fullerton? How did that go about?
I definitely did. I actually went in the summertime. So I got accepted as a liberal studies major. And then I ended up changing my mind. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, I'm going to do African American studies and Chicano studies. And when I got there, I went to go talk to the department chair, and I was like, where do all the Black students hang out? Like, do you guys have a space? Do you have like a program? And so I went down, and she walked me down to the space, and I met the coordinator and everything. And he's like, yeah, this is where we hang out. And he actually went to RCC. So yeah, small world. I was like, I'm from Norco. So he's like, I know where that's at. So he was like, yeah, anything that you need, this is like the space to come. And I was like, okay. And that was in the summertime. So when I first showed up, that was literally the first place I walked to. First day of school. I parked my car, and I had extra time before my class. And I walked there, and I was like, I don't know where this is at. Like, where's my class at? They're like, we'll walk you. So it was even just feeling so welcomed into the space, like being new and being at a much bigger school than Norco. I was like, I don't know where to like go. I don't know like where I'm supposed to like, how am I supposed to find my way to my classes? Like, what do I do? And walking into a space, you know, most of the time you can either be disregarded completely or people kind of look at you and don't say anything. So it was like, oh, hey, like, I've never seen you before. What's your name? Oh, like, my name's Vyvana. Oh, do you need help with anything? Like, are you new? Oh, yeah, like, I'm trying to find my classes. Oh, I'll take you. That's not a problem. And I was like, oh, wow. And we had a Black student welcome, and we called it the ARC, the African American Resource Center. It literally became my second home. So, like, anytime I wasn't in class, that's where I was. And if we had any, like, club meetings, they were like, oh, we're going to go. And literally everyone would just get up and go. So it became, like, a second family to me. And then eventually I joined BSU, and I became the Black Student Union president my senior year at Fullerton. But yeah, definitely had to find my group. So now when we take students to different colleges, I always get in contact with the BSUs, and I get in contact with their African American Resource Centers. And I'm like, find your people. No matter where you go, find your people. And because now as a transfer student, I can come back and give that information to my students here that are about to go. So I see myself in them, so I can help them.
And I think telling our story is so important about finding your people.
Yeah.
And any affinity group, you know, it's so powerful just to find your people. And if your people are the people playing esports, then that's your people, right? And shout out to our national champion D2 rugby team. You know, I mean, that's their people right now. Yeah. And so all of those groups become your people. Yeah. And it is so hard for our students to take that next step sometimes because they have found their people here. And that is a loss to move on to that next phase and to transfer out and to be alone. And I think one of the things that we continue to need to work on is how do we help people make that transition? And the transfer process is hard enough, writing the applications and putting them in and being afraid that you're not going to get accepted. And then all of the new requirements and the spaces that are new, you know, you have to relearn an entire organization. Where do I pay my fees? How do I go? What is their website? Oh my gosh, I have a new email. Yeah. You know, all of those little things are huge when you build them up, and they become barriers to success. So I would like to see us in our equity work and our guided pathways work doing more transitional thinking before the transition happens. Yeah. Right? Having people like you talking about what that experience is, demystifying it. And okay, everybody who's going to transfer to Fullerton, we're going in the bus, you know, we're taking the bus with the Mustang on the side, and we're going to go and walk around, because maybe your people are Norco people. And even if it's just for a minute, we'll meet and have lunch the first week and debrief on how this went. At least you know someone when you walked away. Exactly. So I would like to see us do more work on that. And I think your story is really important. Why do you think you're passionate about this?
For a lot of reasons. So I actually didn't want to go to college. Both of my parents are educators, so they're both fifth grade teachers. And when I was in high school, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. And I remember I tried to evade any math class that I could. I still do. But I was like, I'm just going to model. I'm going to become a nail tech. I'm going to do nails, and I'm going to model. That's all I'm going to do. And I ended up taking like an anatomy class, and that was the first class that I like actually did well in. And I was like, wow. My dad's like, wow, it only took you all of school, because it was my senior year. He was like, it only took you all years of school to like, do a good job. Um, but he told me, he was like, you don't have to go to school. And I was like, well, I don't really want to. But then I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I can't just sit still and do nothing. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll go to school. So for me, I feel like I'm able to relate to those students who struggle in high school, and um, college was much different. Just, I love flexibility, and I love just being able to do whatever I want, which I feel like most people do. And I felt like college gave me that compared to high school. So for me, going through that transition, I always try and tell, we do a lot of like high school outreach right now, trying to get some of those students to come not only into Emoji, but just to help them, because it's a big transition for them, right? Life is just about transitions. So when we talk to them, I always tell them, like, college is much different. Like, if you struggle here, just know college is much different, and you have a family here and you have a support system. You may not believe me yet, but just wait until next year. Like, we'll show you. I'm very passionate about this work because I've seen how much it's done for me. So had I not been in Emoja, I wouldn't be here right now. I already know that. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And after taking those classes and being so involved in this community, I was like, I want to go to school for ethnic studies. And like, just learning the history. I'm very big on, if you want to know why things are the way that they are today, you need to look in the past. And I feel like that's information that's been taken away from my community just due to not being able to read and write, and things being hidden or destroyed. So now I feel like that's like my next transition in life is to become a professor and teach that. But I don't think that I would have found that particular love. I think I had always had an interest in that type of history, but working so close with the community made me realize how much of a need there is in that. And it was really like the driving force for me to want to continue in school and come back and work so closely with the community. So overall, I feel like I'm very passionate about the work because I relate to it so personally. And it's helped me so much just in my everyday life. This job never really finishes. We don't really clock out anytime that the students
That is
need.
so very true.
Yeah. So I think it's ironic that we don't have like, punch cards, right? Because we really don't clock out. Just being able to be there for them. It's like I see myself, like every time that I meet with students and stuff, like I remember how I was at that time. And just being able to really see myself in the students, and then knowing that I can help them now the same way that someone helped me. Just the idea of giving back. I'm very passionate about giving back, and we have to elevate ourselves and grow and increase our knowledge in order to give back and spread that to others. So I feel like it would be selfish of me to just take everything that I've learned and keep it to myself. I really want to help the community that I get to work for now, which is a blessing.
So, and 100% on everything that you've just said, you're talking about reformation. You can't dismantle and rebuild without knowing where it was built and why it was built and with what intention. And we know many of those intentions were nefarious, right? We know our educational system was intended to keep people out. And, people can pretend all they want that it wasn't. It was intended to keep people out. So the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing with equity and guided pathways is reformation. And I, people always want to say, oh, it's like revolutionary work. And I want to say, revolution's throwing out. I like reformation because it's taking the things that were working and rebuilding or reshaping intentionally with purpose. And to me, that's the equity work. That's guided pathways is the framework to make that work, right? The equity work is intentionally putting people in positions where they're going to succeed and to provide them with the resources that they need to succeed right with them. that's what you are, right? As a success coach, they don't have to go looking for you.
Yeah.
You're in their business, which is a good thing, right? You're intentionally in their business, right? And I remember when we were first hiring success coaches, we'd never had them before. We were talking about what their job description was actually going to be. And it was, this really purposeful person in their life. And I think we have obviously hit it out of the park with you coming back and doing this because you do relate so well, and you do have all these experiences that you can say, I was there. I look like you. I am like you in many ways. And I think we have to make that bigger and broader, do more of that. So I just want to highlight the work that you're doing as so important. I want to talk for a minute about the Women's Lean In, because I don't know as many people are as aware. I mean, we see the announcements and it's so tell me a little bit more about Women's Lean In.
So Women's Lean In Circle was actually started by our previous student success coach, Anita Bailey. Like, shouts out to her. She's amazing. But it's really just a space for particularly marginalized women, but anyone who identifies as a woman is more than welcomed into the space. But it's really just a safe space to let go. Mm-hmm. I think that as women, we have to, especially women part of marginalized communities, we hold so many masks and we wear so many masks. I feel like when it comes to family, like there's things that cultural things, mm-hmm. familial things, work. How do you manage being in the workplace with things changing so often? So it's really just a safe space for our women to come and just let go. And we'll have different topics that we discuss. But I think that it's important for people to have a space where they don't feel judged mm-hmm. to talk about things, and where they're able to speak about things in a space where they know that other people will relate, or at least be able to add on to it. If it's not exactly the same thing that they're going through, oh, okay, well, I see what you're going through. I haven't been through that personally, but I've been through this and this and this. And maybe you can, utilize those tools in that. So it's really just a safe space for our mm-hmm. women on campus.
That's terrific. What kind of events have you done recently?
So more recently, last semester we went to an apple farm. So we went apple picking. They're out of apples. But we'll do night hikes. We typically do retreats. We just did a meditate and manifest workshop as well. I'm very big on holistic healing and really listening to your body, because your body will tell you what's wrong with you before you know what's going on. So just that's kind of one of my main focuses with them. And then we did a community service event where we made blankets and we donated them to children in need.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Where do you see your work expanding in the future? Or where should we expand at Norco College?
As far as my job specifically, or with affinity groups, campus
support, thinking about support and affinity groups.
I think as of right now, one of the biggest areas where we need to expand is community. I feel as if, we try to do a very good job with it, as far as with Emoji, and just letting students know that we're here. But I think that when COVID happened, that took a huge toll on our students. We unfortunately lost a lot of students. It was just very difficult being online. And I think that letting students know, especially those who struggled during that time, it's okay to have rough patches. So we have a lot of students who failed, unfortunately, last semester. And now they have all A's. And I'm like, wow. And they're like, yeah, I'm a little proud of myself. A little. To be very.
Let's celebrate.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of students during that time felt very discouraged. Which, understandably so. I struggled during that time, too. I think everyone did.
It's safe to say pretty much everybody struggled during this time.
Exactly. It had its positives, but it was definitely a struggle. And I think that, even though we still had a presence online, it's not the same as being in person. And then a lot of my students have told me that, like, you know what, yeah, I showed up online, but I didn't really care. I was like, yeah, I don't blame you. I didn't either, you know, at my school, not here. I care here. But, you know, just trying to really rebuild all that we had before and all that was lost during COVID. And really just having the students know, like, it's okay that you struggled during that time. A lot of people did, and you're not by yourself. But this is a time to kind of like bounce back. So I've seen a lot of the students do that. But I think that goes back to that taking a leap, right? Like, you know that you didn't do a good job, and now you're scared and you don't want to fail again, which is completely understandable. So just really trying to, the best we can do is just assure students that we're here and assure them that they're not alone and assure them that we have the tools for them to help them be successful. They just have to show up.
Right.
And that's something that even we struggle with. In Emoji, we have embedded tutors. Our professors are there and they're, you know, available all the time. It's just a matter of having people use the resources, which is a little frustrating sometimes. But sometimes they just have to see it for themselves. So they just have to do that, have that initial leap. But I think the biggest thing is community. I know that's the area that I've seen our students thrive the most and be the most successful is when they're really embedded into the community. So I think just trying to figure out a way to have that campus-wide is the best. And I think that we're doing a good job so far, especially coming back and, you know, trying to do different events on campus and just really inviting people out. I think it goes back to word of mouth, right? It's like, you know, someone in that class, hey, like, we're having a Cinco de Mayo thing, like, why don't you come out? So I think that's the area that
we had our Eid too. I was very excited about that.
We did. A lot of students showed up, and I know a lot of them were very grateful. It was the first time that we got to do something for our Muslim community. So that was awesome.
That was really cool. And then space. I think you mentioned going to a space, going to a place.
Yeah.
I think the more we identify spots and spaces, the better we can do. Because it's important to go somewhere. And,
it is.
You know, I used to say, yeah, everybody knew that ratty old couch that was underneath a stairwell somewhere and everybody hung out there. Those kind of spaces. We have a hard time with those little niche spots.
Yeah.
We brought some picnic tables behind the Emoji classroom and we're putting them on that side and it's nice and shady over there. And I was like, oh, that's such a nice little spot. I'd like to grow this spot, right? I'd like to have it really be a spot.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of inside spaces here.
Yeah, and I think I've even seen a huge change from when I was here. So we had, it was IT 206. That was where our classes were. And if we had village space, then that's where we'd go to kind of hang out. But for the most part, outside of class, it was like we would hang out, like you said, out in the benches. And now having an actual designated space, that's where like the students show up every day. And I'm like, oh, it's Friday at 7:00. Like, why are you guys still here? I'm just hanging out. Okay.
No, that's really great, though.
It is. No, I joke around with them all the time, but no, I love. Yeah, but I love having them there, and for me, it's like I know that they're staying out of trouble. Yeah. And meeting with the students when I first got here, and some of them definitely were getting themselves into trouble. So it's like seeing them now just be here and like want to be at school. I'm like, I wouldn't want anything else. So having an actual designated space definitely has made a huge difference, I feel like.
Right. I love that. I love the fact that students think of us as the safe space. And that is something that is invaluable because it will keep them coming to us and keep them trusting and knowing we're there to help them.
Exactly.
And that's what we really want to do. Well, this has been terrific.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope everyone listening has felt like they have found out more about our affinity groups and the great work that you're doing. I cannot thank you enough, and everybody in Emoji and Women's Lean In and all of our other affinity groups. We were trying to count them the other day, and we got over 30 and couldn't get, but this has been spectacular. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
This has been, would you like to know more about affinity groups from Norco College?